The Tampa Bay Lightning took down the Florida Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions, for the second time in the preseason. That might not seem like such a huge deal before the regular season has begun, but we'll take a look as to why it means a lot for this new Tampa Bay Lightning squad on today's episode of Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. And we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is the podcast for you. Josh Sperber here. And before we get into the Lightning's preseason win over the Florida Panthers, I want to wish everyone who is watching, particularly those that are in the Tampa Bay area, health, happiness, and safety as we're all recovering from the Hurricane Helene aftermath. I just got back to the Tampa Bay area. I was fortunate to be able to hide out northeast, and it is just not a pretty sight in a lot of areas of this great city. So hopefully everyone watching is safe, gets power back, what have you. Just we want all the best for our friends as part of this Locked On Lightning podcast. And the Tampa Bay Lightning are continuing to do their part with players donating around $10,000 to various local charities, and the Lightning captain proving his leadership off the ice as well. Victor Hedman and his wife Sana pledged a total of $150,000 to local relief efforts following Hurricane Helene. And the bulk of those funds will go towards the Tampa Bay Police Benevolent Association and Coast Guard Foundation as the Lightning continues to do their part as community leaders. I already mentioned in yesterday's podcast that Julian Brisebois and Jeff Vinnick announced the donation of $2 million to local hurricane charities. So great to see the Tampa Bay Lightning as local leaders and community heroes as we all try and deal with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. But on a much more positive note, the Tampa Bay Lightning took down the Florida Panthers for the second time this season. Last time, it was a Connor Geekie last-second goal in an 8-7 just bloodbath of an offensive performance. This time, the defense really shone the brightest for the Tampa Bay Lightning, allowing one power play goal in the third period. And despite the fact that they were outshot 27-25 by the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Lightning took a 3-1 win over the Florida Panthers. Maxime Groshev got the empty net goal that sealed it in the final minutes of the game. Connor Geekie got an assist to Gage Gonsalves. Zemgus Girgensons got himself an assist as well, as did Ethan Gauthier and Nikita Kucherov, with Kuch's assist coming on the empty netter. It was the first time the Lightning took the advantage in face-off percentage, showing the impact that their starters had, with the Tampa Bay Lightning playing the majority of their projected first liners and what seems like their three defensive lines. We'll talk about that a little later on, but Tampa winning the face-off battle for the first time in a game this preseason, 0 for 4 on power plays, but took the puck away from the Panthers 7 times to Florida's 3 takeaways. Lightning also dished out 13 hits and blocked 9 shots in the victory, showing a nice physical defensive presence that should prove to be crucial for the Tampa Bay Lightning this season. We're going to get into more detail about some of the new blood later on, and the Lightning with a total of 11 goals in 2 games against the Florida Panthers. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, this is just preseason. It's not a huge deal. But both of these teams, for the most part, played their starters. Yes, you saw some guys, particularly on the offense for both squads, that were in the game, prospects that might not be on the Panthers roster or the Lightning roster come the beginning of the NHL season. But Sergei Bobrovsky got the start for the Florida Panthers, and he faced 4 fewer shots than their goalie Knight, who made a couple of nice saves, 13 total. Bobrovsky just 9 saves and a goal allowed, spending about half of the game on the ice for the Florida Panthers. And Tampa Bay took the lead on Bobrovsky. both teams got to play some of their starters, and Lightning's first liners looked fantastic. We're going to go into more of the new blood, but Jake Guentzel, just always worth noting how well he is able to gel with different players on each of the stops that he's had. Two different teams last year, two very different lines, and he helped the Hurricanes in the regular season and the playoffs. No stats for Guentzel, but he was very close to having a goal early on. Knight made a couple of nice saves on him. And Guentzel seems to be a big factor in the power play. Looks to be the guy close to the net, trying to get him the trigger pull for power plays on a lot of chances for the Lightning in this upcoming season. So that's certainly something to look for as we keep going. It was really good to see Victor Hedman back on the ice, Nikita Kucherov, and Jonas Johansson was great in net. Andrei Vasilevsky did not dress. I'm sure they're just doing this for precautionary reasons, as Vasilevsky obviously expected to be the Lightning netminder over the course of the season. Johansson, in my book, gets the player of the game. Only one power play goal allowed, playing all 63 minutes, or all 60 minutes and 3 periods, making 26 saves on 27 shots. And Johansson looked really good in net, had some tough shots that he stopped. Gage Gonzalez got a goal as well. Goal and assist from Maxim Groshev, but again, his goal came on an empty netter from about center ice, taking advantage of just getting a step ahead of the Florida Panthers. And that really seemed like it was the MO for the Tampa Bay Lightning in this preseason affair. They just seem to be a step ahead of Florida. This is a very new team, but it really didn't look like it on the ice. You've got a lot of guys who have been up in this minor league system for a couple of years for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they really might not have blue chip prospects besides Connor Geekie. In the last couple of years, they might not have had one of the better ranked farm systems in the NHL, but they developed talent like no other. Guys that might not be the highest name on the prospect chart, still coming in and making impacts for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And these homegrown players really did most of the work against the defending champions. Emil Lilleberg got the first goal of the game on a long-distance shot that he fit into the top corner. And Connor Geekie really impressed me, particularly on that second period goal to Gage Gonzalez. It was a 2-on-1, and Geekie took the shot himself, bounced it off the pads of the goalkeeper. The defender had inside position on him, so Geekie had to reach over the defender, avoid the outstretched stick of the goaltender Knight, and he just kind of pushed it towards Gage Gonzalez, who was uncovered as the trailer and able to get that in. Connor Geekie, I still expect him to start in the AHL, but it's getting a lot harder to say that the more I see him on NHL ice. He's working with guys that you'd expect to be on this Tampa Bay team to start opening day, and he's excelling. He's really playing like an NHL veteran, but I think the Lightning can afford to start him in the AHL as they begin their season and then eventually bring him on if needed. Right now, as a team, though, Tampa Bay Lightning are really clicking. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. The next focus for us is going to be on the defense. For a good portion of this preseason, the Lightning defense has been there to provide goals. Victor Hedman, certainly one of the better scoring defenders in the NHL as well. That's always going to be a guy who you have to watch out for on offense. Emil Lilleberg getting the goal today. And the Lightning defense has been huge, especially on the offensive side over the course of the preseason for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, they still haven't debuted Vasilevsky in the preseason, but I can imagine that's only going to make things smoother. He is really a leader on this Tampa Bay Lightning team, and I expect him to have a big season between the pipes for the Lightning. But the old adage always goes that defense wins championships, and I'm not guaranteeing a Lightning Stanley Cup or anything like that, because I think a lot of things are going to happen to get this young team to that promised land and to be drinking chocolate milk or whatever out of that Stanley Cup come the summertime. But I think the key to Lightning success is going to be their defense, and we're going to break it down for you after a word from some of our sponsors here on Locked On Lightning. Now, I'm not a big sports bettor, but I know all of my friends who bet on games use FanDuel as much as possible. You can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first bet of just $5. That's FanDuel.com. We'll have updated ads for you when the NHL regular season comes on in about a week. But if you're getting started on your NHL bets, make sure to go on FanDuel. Josh Sperber here on Locked On Lightning as we get ready for our second segment, breaking down the Tampa Bay Lightning defense. Now, the Lightning obviously have a defender as their captain in Victor Hedman, but the rest of that defensive unit it has some new faces on it. It really seemed like that the Lightning played Lightning did just play 6 defenders. And it seems like we know who the lines are going to be on defense. It was pretty clear the top 2 lines from the get-go in the offseason that it was going to be Hedman and J.J. Moser on the first line for the Tampa Bay Lightning. The second line seemed pretty clear once Ryan McDonagh was reacquired by Tampa Bay. He would be reuniting with Eric Kernack on his second line of defense for the Lightning. It was the third line that was going to be a little bit questionable in terms of who is going to be on that. It seems like it's going to be Nick Perbix and Emil Lilleberg on line number 3 as they played in the third line of defense for the Tampa Bay Lightning in this last preseason game, and they looked really good. Both guys have had some experience with the Tampa Bay Lightning, with Perbix playing in 146 games over the past 2 seasons, and Lilleberg signed to his first one-way NHL contract by the Tampa Bay Lightning in the offseason. So it seemed like he was a guy that was going to be on that third line, but I think it's going to be some more auditions between who joins him on that third line of defense for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But that third line of defense was the most effective for Tampa Bay. Emil Lilleberg got the first goal of the game, which would prove to be the game-winning goal. And Nick Perbix and Lilleberg had a +2, combining for 5 Lightning hits of the 13 that they had in total. And especially on that third line, I really liked the physicality of the Lightning defense. You know, Lilleberg is always a guy who's going to mix it up. He was ready to drop gloves at one point during that second period as well. So I really like the energy that he brings. And I think part of it is certainly him fighting for a spot right now, but just everything I've seen from him in this preseason shows me that he is a guy who is not afraid of contact and honestly relishes it. He wants to make that hit. He wants to make the energy play. He might even be ready to drop the gloves and put himself in the penalty box for a little bit if it means pushing the momentum in favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it seems like the decision to sign Lilleberg to a one-way contract has really motivated him to try and get himself some staying power in what is expected to be his first full season in the NHL in 2024 and 2025, and he has really seemed to cement his spot on the third line. And Hedman and Moser was only really a question because J.J. Moser is switching sides with Victor Hedman taking his normal place on defense. And Moser hasn't been a first-line defender yet, but pairing him up with Victor Hedman seems to be only yielding positive results. Hedman was on the penalty kill for Tampa Bay with J.J. Moser, but on that line, a goal was scored as well. So an even 0 for the Lightning. There was no player on the Lightning side with a negative plus minus. So that is always a positive, no pun intended. But Tampa Bay with a 2-goal lead, and this game was really the best defensive performance I think that they have had over the course of the preseason. And it shows the difference that Victor Hedman and some of those starters provide. But it's the difference that the Lightning's defense needs to provide before, you can really gauge how far they go in this upcoming NHL season. And I really think that it is going to be the defense that is going to be the most crucial for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm not worried about Victor Hedman, but there's really, some kind of new blood, some kind of readjustment on every single line of the Tampa Bay defense if you break it down. Yes, I understand that Eric Cernak and Ryan McDonough were line mates for a number of years and won a couple of Stanley Cups together, but it's still been a while since they've played together, and it's still going to take a little bit of time for them to recapture their chemistry and get themselves back to the level of the force that they were in that Stanley Cup run a couple of years ago. J.J. Moser is new completely to the Tampa Bay Lightning, getting thrust into a role bigger than he's seen so far in his short NHL career. Yes, he is joining one of the most accomplished players in Lightning history, a guy who is set to pass Steven Stamkos for most games played most by a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning in their career. And I think that can only make Moser better. Putting a guy, less experienced player, I'm not saying a rookie because Moser has been in the NHL for the last 3 years and been getting pretty significant time with Arizona, now Utah. But still, it's a new system. It's a new group of guys that he has to get used to. And in Moser's case, it's a new side of the ice that he has to get used to defending. So that him with Victor Hedman, I think, is a really good idea to, have that first line pairing. And, there's still going to be some growing pains. As good as Hedman is, as much experience that he has, anytime you're putting a new skater on the ice next to you, things are going to have to change a little bit. You're going to have to get used to how that guy plays. And, it's still, Moser is replacing Mikhail Sergachev. That is something that has been so lost on really me and a number of other Lightning fans because of how well Moser has seemed to adapt already. It already seems that these guys are clicking on all cylinders, with really the exception of that Panthers game on Saturday. But I think some of the Hurricane hangover might have had something to do with that. But now that the Hurricane is past, the Lightning do have a lot more to play for, I feel like, just really playing for the city. I mean, driving around Tampa and St. Petersburg today, I saw boats in places that boats absolutely should not be, like in the middle of a playground or on a parking lot. And I think you can already tell that some of these Lightning players are really taking that to heart. Now, the reason I put dependent on the defense there is because I think that this Lightning team is going to go as far as the defense takes them. We've already seen the success of this Lightning offense, and the offensive players, with the exception of swapping Jake Gensel for Steven Stamkos, really remain relatively similar. There's a couple of different guys thrown in on lines, but most of those newer guys are NHL veterans. Until Connor Geekie ends up coming to the NHL, which again, I believe he will at some point this season, it's a pretty young, but still pretty veteran-heavy team, especially on the offensive side for the Tampa Bay Lightning. You add guys like Gergensen, who's played a number of years for the Buffalo Sabres, Jake Gensel, who has played on elite teams with two of the greatest hockey players of our generation in Pittsburgh, and then is a deadline deal to Carolina, helps them finish as one of the top 5 team points-wise last season, and becomes a key piece in their playoff run. Now, he's going to be replacing Steven Stamkos, and that is something that is really not going to be expected of him. The Lightning staff has made it very clear that you can't replace a guy like Steven Stamkos. They're just going to have to get used to him, get used to being without him on offense. But you see the physicality of this Lightning defense on all lines, particularly the younger guys like Lilleberg and Perbix, who are really trying to cement their status on this Tampa Bay Lightning team. You see the physicality, you see the energy, And having that, especially on a defense of a young, pretty much rebuilding team, that is crucial to forging this new team's identity. Because let's face it, this is a new era of Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. You've got a new captain. Only one of the assistant captains is the same as last year with Hedman promoted. This is, in a lot of ways, a brand new team for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I think in modern hockey, a lot is still focused on the offense, and I think that's true about a lot of different sports, but a really solid physical defensive unit that has shown the ability to stay behind on the attack, find little pockets of space, and rip rockets towards the net. That is something that can make the difference between a team on the cusp of the playoffs and a shoo-in to make a quest for another Stanley Cup appearance. Now, again, I don't think the Lightning are going to make the Stanley Cup finals as of right now. I think they can be a playoff team, but that physicality of the defense, that ability to help on the offensive side with those defensive players providing support to the Lightning offense, that is going to be the most crucial factor to determine whether the Lightning can move on and start this new era with a playoff appearance or with disappointment in missing the postseason. Now, we've been talking about some of these new players for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're going to get into a little more detail because I really liked what I saw from some of the younger guys on the Tampa Bay Lightning squad. And I mean, this is really turning into a Connor Geeky Stan podcast because just the conundrum of him getting to the NHL roster on opening day or not continues to populate my mind as we get ready for the season. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more after a word from our friends at Gametime. One of my favorite things to do is go to live sporting events. And the way I get my tickets is on the Gametime app. It's got a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events, like, for example, Tampa Bay Lightning games, even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. It is so easy to use on the Gametime app, and it makes all other ticket services seem kind of irrelevant. We have curated deals on Gametime to make it easier to find the best price on great seats. You can look at the seat views before you buy and literally see exactly what seat and view you are getting. And they'll give you a lowest price guarantee, protection against cancellation of the event, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. You can use the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL. After you make an account, redeem Locked On NHL for $25 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Back for the final segment of today's matchup, and we are talking about some of the new faces and some of the younger players that have continued to impress during the preseason. Now, I know in some ways that is what you expect about these young guys. Preseason, in a lot of cases, isn't as much for the guys that are going to be starting. Just for further context, this was the first game where we saw Lightning first liners get on the ice in the preseason. It was the fourth game of the preseason for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And while I honestly would have liked to see the preseason debut of Victor Hedman be at home, I think that would have meant a lot. I really like to see, kind of a sneak peek at some of the potential of the Tampa Bay Lightning this season. I talked about the physicality of Lilleberg, the fact that Jake Gensel just seemed to have a nose for goal, always just shifting himself into position to get the puck, just attacking that puck constantly was Gensel. And he got a couple of good chances on goal, but the Panthers, with some solid goalie play, made some nice saves and stopped Gensel from getting his first goal as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Gensel was described earlier in the season by assistant coach Jeps Halpern as a guy who works really hard. And a quote that I really liked was, he's a guy who just needs to go get the puck. And that was very evident in this game against Florida. He was always trying to find himself a way to get open, always communicating with his teammates and trying to put himself into the right spots to get himself a clear line on net. And he was able to pick up a couple shots on net as well. Jake Gensel finished with just one shot on goal and a plus minus of a +1 as well. But it was a good kind of start, I think, to start getting him acclimated with Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point. Their chemistry is still just undeniable. The leading passer and leading scorer on the Lightning roster last season. You kind of know what to expect from them, but it really seems like Jake Gensel is going to fit in seamlessly with this Tampa Bay Lightning squad, and I really enjoyed seeing that. The defense we talked about a lot. It really seems like those lines are set, and Emil Ehlberg is, I think, on his way to a breakout season with the Tampa Bay Lightning, because he's still definitely, I think, there's room for him to improve, but he has shown his ability to recover from mistakes, to be active on the offense. He's had a couple assists and a goal so far this preseason, and it really seems like he's going to be a key player on this Tampa Bay Lightning defense. And still a lot of the guys that the Lightning played were younger players. Gage Gonzalez and Connor Geekie are really the two I think have an inside track to get on that Lightning roster. I think it's pretty safe to say that Girgensons is going to be on the Lightning opening day roster as well. He's looked really solid, but it's some of the young players that are really interesting, because Maxim Groshev is someone that I've been really high on, and I talked about, and I'm sure you guys have seen in your own ways, how strong he has been at the rookie camps over the past couple of years. And, now him getting more time in the preseason, he's not skipping a beat. Groshev seems pretty NHL ready, and I wouldn't be surprised if he made it to the Lightning opening day roster, and definitely think he's going to get significant time with Tampa in this upcoming season. And Connor Geekie still remains the most interesting question on this Tampa Bay Lightning roster. He's the best, maybe the best prospect the Lightning have had in a number of years. Certainly has the most hype, former first-round pick, key piece in that Mikhail Sergachev trade. And, initially, from a guy who has done a lot of other work in the minor leagues, you see a guy like that, you think, Lightning just lost their big star. They're kind of shifting things around in, they're changing players. They're adding a whole bunch of new guys in the offseason. Do they even have room for their top prospect who has options? They can afford to let him down and start the season in the minor leagues. And I have said multiple times, maybe honestly every episode I've done on Locked On Lightning, that Connor Geekie would probably be better off starting his season in the NHL. But more and more, the more I watch him play, the more NHL ready I think that he is. And he could be, a game-changing kind of player. Whether he's going to instantly start in the NHL as a game changer, that's harder to say. But he certainly has that kind of potential. And I really believe that the Tampa Bay Lightning have a just top guy. Everything that the front office, the coaches, players have said about Connor Geekie has been so complimentary. And I still think that the Lightning would benefit from starting him down in the AHL a little bit. I think that would help him just develop a little bit more, see him dominate in Syracuse for a little bit before you call him up to start the new year or after All-Star break or something like that. Give some of the veterans time to gel with the rest of their compatriots on the Tampa Bay Lightning before you try and push the young guy in, because the last thing you'd want with a big name like Connor Geekie is to ruin his confidence by calling him up to the NHL too early and he gets beat up. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. He already showed elite awareness on that assist to Gage Gonzalez. And, you know, he recovered from maybe a mistake. Maybe he should have hit Gonzalez a little bit earlier on that 2-on-1, but he got the job done. He's a guy who already has a high hockey IQ. He's clearly gelling well with his teammates. And I think that, you know, apart from the defense, just getting these guys mixed together, getting that chemistry to the point that you want it for a high-level team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, that is going to be something to watch. And it already looks like they're on the good foot in terms of that. So a strong defense and team chemistry, I think, are the two keys to start this Tampa Bay Lightning season. Something that we're going to have to continue to watch, of course, is the defense, because right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, chemistry-wise, look like they're in midseason form. They really looked just complete. I mean, they just played such a complete game against the defending champions, the majority of the Florida starters getting action against Tampa on the ice. And the Lightning did have a good mix of prospects and veterans, but this Tampa Bay Lightning team looks ready to contend. And you know, there's going to be some worry about this team without Stamkos, with a lot of new faces. But just from what I saw today, I really think this Tampa Bay Lightning team can be a legitimate playoff contender in this upcoming season. We'll have more to discuss on that tomorrow when we preview the Hurricanes game, as we likely see Victor Hedman's first home preseason game as a Lightning captain. But first, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to tune in to Locked On Lightning and making Locked On Lightning your first listen today. For your second listen, go find Locked On NHL, where local experts keep you updated on all the biggest storylines ahead of the upcoming NHL season. Locked On NHL is on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts like Apple and Spotify. Same is the case for Locked On Lightning. Links to our Apple and Spotify show are below, as well as YouTube if you want to watch. But definitely like, follow, subscribe, tell all your friends, because we want to share our love for the Tampa Bay Lightning together. And once again, everyone, please stay safe. I wish everyone the best as we all try to recover from Hurricane Helene here in the Tampa Bay area. And thank you again for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Lightning. I'm Josh Sperber, and we'll see you tomorrow. Go Bolts.